اللهم لك الحمد على ما أنعمت به علينا من تنزيل القرآن. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم اغفر لي جميع ما مضى من ذنوبي وعصمني فيما بقي من عمري وارزقني عملا زاكيا ترضى به عني. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We begin by thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who gave us this blessing of the Qur'an, who sent it down to His chosen last messenger. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him peace. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to drink from his hawd. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open our hearts today to reflect on the book that is the alpha and omega of everything in our lives, the first and the last. Entering the theme of reflection on creation, we had mentioned that this is the theme that allows us the greatest opportunity both for reaching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also for guidance in our life. Today, inshallah, we are going to focus on one aspect of the theme of creation, and that is connected with 45 ayahs using afala. And we won't be able to use all 45 of them, but just the passage in Surah Al-Ghashiyah, afala yanzuruna ila al-ibili kayfa khuliqat wa ila as-samaa'i kayfa rufi'at wa ila al-jibali kayfa nusibat wa ila al-ardi kayfa sutihat. These are the ayahs which are normally translated as afala yanzuruna ila al-ibili kayfa khuliqat. Don't they see how the camel has been created and how the sama has been raised and how the mountains have been nusibat, have been established, put down, while al-ardi kayfa sutihat, and how the earth has been sutihat, flattened. The camel, the sama, the mountains, and the earth. Four things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. And He is asking us, afala yanzuruna, He is asking them, have they not seen? Have they not, nazara, have they not seen? Now, there are 13 words connected with afala in these 45 ayahs. There are 13 different usages. It's going to be a little bit difficult class today, and there are some deliberate footnotes and side notes to it. But I want you to be very engaged with the issue at hand, which is to reflect on why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take only 4 things out of millions of things He has created and say, reflect on these. Number 2, which is very important, what are these 13 ways of reflection? These are distinct invitations. Afala is used with 13 specific words, which I want to point out immediately so that we have some grounding to where we are going. The first, afala ta'qilun. Afala ta'qilun. What does that mean? Ta'qilun is the use of the intellect. Al-aql. Al-aql, translated as intellect, is a faculty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to all of us. And aql is one of the ways to gather knowledge. Afala ta'qilun. Second, afala yatadabbarun al-Qur'an. Now again, afala, for now we are translating is do you not, do they not. Afala, afala. This is a very important word, a combination of letters. A is a letter, harf. La is a letter, and fa is a letter. We talked about 5 kinds of fas in the Quran last time. Fa is a harf atf. It joins, and it can have other meanings too out of those 5. But a is istifham. When you want to ask a question, you use the harf a. And la, as you know, is negation. La is negation. A, fa, la. 3 particles. Letters is not a good translation. These are harf. These are the particles. A, fa, la. A is istifham, questioning. Fa is joining, and la is negation. Afala yatadabbarun al-Quran, normally translated as do they not yatadabbarun, do they not reflect on the Quran. This is the second of the 13. First was ta'qilun, second is yatadabbarun. The third usage of afala is tatafakkarun.
Once again, my meeting is disconnected.
Afala tatafakkarun. Do they not do fikr, which is another form of reflection. Yatadabbarun and tatafakkarun, these are distinct and separate, otherwise there won't be 2 separate words for them. And that's what we are trying to understand, the ways to reflect on the creation. Afala tatafakkarun, and then we have afala tattaqun. Tattaqun is, don't they have the awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And this is connected by ila adina ahahum huda qala ya qawmi ibudullaha ma lakum min ilahin ghayru afala tattaqun. We sent to Ad their brother Hud alayhi salam, who said to his people, ya qawmi ibudullah, worship Allah, ma'alakum min ilahin ghayru. What is wrong with you? There is nothing worthy of worship other than Him. Then we have afala tazakkarun. Inna rabbakum Allahu alladhi khalaqa as-samawati wal arda fi 6 ayamin thumma istawa al-arsh yudabbiru al-amr ma min shafi'in illa min ba'di iznihi ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُوا أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Tazakkarun, zakara is to remember. The next we have afala yu'minun. Awalam yara alladhina kafaru anna as-samawati wal arda kanata ratqan. We did this several times in the previous classes, that the samawat and the earth were together, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we separate them. Afala yuminun. Don't they believe? So don't they reflect? Don't they have awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Don't they remember? And now don't they believe? Afala tubsirun. Subhanallah. This ayah, قُلْ أَرَأَيْتُمْ إِنْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمُ اللَّيْلَ سَرْمَدًا إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ إِلَٰهُ غَيْرُ اللَّهِ يَأْتِكُمْ بِضِيَاءٍ أَفَلَا تَسْمَعُونَ قُلْ أَرَأَيْتُمْ إِنْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمُ النَّهَارَ سَرْمَدًا إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ إِلَٰهُ غَيْرُ اللَّهِ يَأْتِكُمْ بِاللَّيْلِ تَسْكُنُونَ فِيهِ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. 2 ayahs, one after the other. One asking, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to make the layl, the night, perpetual upon you, who other than Allah would be able to bring you light? Afala tasma'un, don't you hear? The second ayah, next ayah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to make the day perpetual for you, who would bring layl, who would bring the night so that you can rest? Afala tubsirun, don't you see? So, focusing on afala and what comes with it, we have now the hearing, the sight, the aql. And aql also includes the faculty of reflection and memory. Now, memory is another inner faculty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. We remember things with the faculty of memory. When memory is lost, we have nothing left. Functionality will be gone if we don't have memory. If we don't know, if we don't remember how to walk, how to talk, how to eat, how to put salt into our food, how to put sugar into our coffee, we wouldn't remember anything. If we don't remember, we have nothing left. So this faculty of remembrance that we have is connected with the ability of remembrance. Zikr is connected with memory. Afala yashkurun. Walam fiha manafi wa musharib. Afala yashkurun. This is dealing with the cattle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put manafi, benefits. Afala yashkurun. Don't they be thankful? Giving gratitude, giving thanks. That's also connected with afala. And finally we have afala ya'lamu idha bu'thira ma fil qubur. Afala ya'lamu, knowledge. Don't they know? Ilm. So let's begin by, these are the 13 usages in which afala is compounded with either an inner faculty or an external, the sense, the 5 external senses. Why is that? That's our question. What is the connection between afala, between reflection on these 4 creations and these words? Where do we go? And specifically, we said we won't be able to use all 45 ayahs using afala, but this passage, afala yanzuruna ila al-ibili kayfa khuliqat, and even within that we will just be able to focus on the first one, not on the sama, not on the jibal, and not on the earth. Let's just, what comes to mind? What have the mufassirs done with this passage? Afala yanzuruna ila al-ibili kayfa khuliqat. There are layers of reflection. And the very obvious would be what? The translation is afala yanzuruna ila al-ibili kayfa khuliqat. Do they not see how? Do they not look at the camel? Kayfa khuliqat, how it has been created. What would we think about? When we hear this ayah, what comes to our mind? What is the first thing that comes to our mind? We will definitely go searching for the what would we do? Have they not seen at the camel how it has been created? What would we try to do? We'll try to find out something about the camel. Go Wikipedia, find out, what is there? Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us to look at the camel? There must be something very significant in the camel, in the creation of the camel. And why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just say, look at the camel? Why not the horse or the elephant or other? Right? This is what we'll think. Now I'm asking this because there are certain fundamental aspects of the process of reflection on the Qur'an that have not changed over the centuries. We are asking these questions in 2023. In the 7th century, 8th century, 9th century, people who were reflecting on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the scholars and the common people, they still had the same kind of questions. What would they do? They would still go, the very first layer is the camel itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned the camel in the book. There must be something special. What is it that we can find out? So according to their understanding at that time, they would look at the most obvious aspect of the camel. They knew that this is a very special animal. And sometimes, Mufassirs, they also say that because the Qur'an is being revealed to the Arabs, it's in Arabic. Arabs live in the deserts, and camel is the sheep of the desert. It's the camel is their main. So they had so many usages of the camel, and they knew the importance of the camel. And Arabic itself, like almost everything goes to camel somehow. If you go to the meanings, lots of words just go. So, but there are. This is the obvious layer. I want to go to the third layer. This is the first top layer. What is it that they have said about the camel? Now, our principle is that we don't make up our own tafsir. We are not scholars of tafsir. We don't have the qualifications. We are only able to connect to the tradition, to the entirety of the tradition, not just one particular scholar, and find out and summarize what they have said. So the first footnote, because it has come to the modern time as well, there is a secondary meaning of ibil. In the Lugha, it has, camel is the main meaning, but it can also be the clouds. Ibil can be clouds. Afala yanzuruna al-ibili kayfa khuliqat. And because this next ayah is what? Samai, and the clouds are in the sky. So some of the linguistics, they said, well, this may mean look at the clouds, not the camel. But it was rejected. However, Muhammad Asad picked it up. In his translation, you will find that he uses the word cloud in the main translation. Then he has a footnote and he tries to justify why he's using it. But he doesn't tell us that it was rejected. This meaning was rejected in this particular context. That's a footnote. But we go to Tabilat Ahl Sunnah, this wonderful tafsir of one of the greatest scholars that we have, Al-Maturidi. He says there are two possible reasons for specifying the camel. Number one, he says, Innal ibli kanat min akhassa dawab ahl Makkah. The camel was the most special animal for the people of Makkah. Alayha kanu yusafiruna wa alayha kanu yankiluna ma akhtaju alayhi. And he says, they traveled on it, they put their luggage on it, and I mean, they lived between the mountains. It was very hard to carry this huge weight on their backs if camel is going up to some extent. Plus, they traveled in the deserts, and this animal could travel for long times without even needing water. What other animal is there that can travel for 10 days without needing water? So this is the first layer that and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked them. But he says, but there is another reason. Another possible reason is that all the benefits, look at this insight, all the benefits that human being can derive from the animals, they are all present in the camel, in one single animal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put the benefit of riding, the benefit of milk, the benefit of meat, eating, and the benefit of carrying the weight. 4 usages of the camel, of the animals, and centuries later, centuries before that, before Maturidi, somebody went to Ji. Something is missing.
Walaikum salam. Is everything okay?
So, centuries before, not many centuries before, but this is this is Hasan al-Basri rahmullah. Somebody went to him and he said, what if somebody has never seen a camel? Like, this is very early. This is the time when Muslims have just arrived in Persia, for example. And there are places in the world where camels is not, nobody has ever actually seen camel. And they are now reading the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in which camel is mentioned. He said, what about the elephant? Isn't elephant the best? Like, it's so powerful, it can carry the weight. And armies can use the elephant, etc. And he said, but it's like khinzir. It's like the pigs. Because you cannot eat and you cannot drink the milk of an elephant. But even before that, we have a report from Qatada, rahimullah. He says, لما نعت الله ما في الجنة عجب من ذلك أهل الدلالة فأنزل الله أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وكانت الإبل عيشا من عيش العرب وخولا من خولهم. He puts it into the context of just what came before this ayah, saying that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned Jannah and all the things in Jannah, the Ahlul Dalala, calls them Ahlul Dalala, those disbelievers, people who had gone astray, they wondered, is it possible to have a place where rivers will be flowing, where fruits would be like this and all the rest of it? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this and asking them, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَكَانَتِ الْإِبْلُ عَيْشًا مِنْ عَيْشِ الْعَرَبِ. And this was their means of livelihood. And this is what carried them around. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pointed their attention toward the animal they actually use on a daily basis and say, just look at how it has been created. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can create something like this about so much, and they knew a lot about the camels. They knew a lot about the camels. And then another reflection came, this is in Qurtubi's, rahimullah. He said that their child, like this 8-year-old boy, camel is so high. But camel is the only animal that would actually sit down. If this 8-year-old child just points, sit down, it will sit down. They would load the camel with weight and then it will get up. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this the fitrah of the camel, that it is obeying this 8-year-old boy who is just helpless himself. Says sit down, it sits down. If boy says stand up, it stands up. Says start to walk, it starts to walk. How are they not able to believe in what is being said about the Jannah? Now Imam al-Qurtubi, this is where I want to have a little bit of digression as well, because we need to connect with these people. These are not abstract names for us. Like, they are our relatives. They are our real relatives. Like, we need to have relationships with them. We have Silatul Raham. We have the relationships of the womb. What happens in a womb? What happens in a womb? We don't have a blood relation. Blood relation is foreign to the Quranic worldview. We have relationships of the womb. So whoever occupies the same womb, same rahim, is connected perpetually. So mothers, not fathers, although the naming is through the father, but it's the mother who gives the birth, and mother who knows whose child this is, and mother is the one who becomes the link. Silatul Rahim is the connection of the womb that we talk about. So we have connections to these individuals who have reflected on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not in an abstract way, or at least we need to have connection. So Al-Qurtubi, as you can figure out from the name itself, was from Cordoba in Spain, in Al-Andalus. And he was born in 1204 and he died in 1273. This is the beginning of the 13th century. And I'm mentioning this because there is a connection between what he was able to do for us in this short life of 69 years. He left behind a tafsir in 10 volumes in which he synthesized for the second time for us what had gone for the first 600 years. Remember the first collection was Al-Tabari, we mentioned that. 300 years after him, he was in the 309, this is 671 Hijrah when he died. But I'm mentioning him because he is very special in another way as well, not just because he has synthesized this knowledge for us, but also because the 13th century of the Common Era, which is the 7th century Hijrah, is a century that is very much similar to what we have in many ways in terms of the state of the Ummah. 13th century. So Imam al-Qurtubi, Abu Abdullah Muhammad bin Ahmad bin Abi Bakr bin Farah al-Ansari al-Khazraji al-Qurtubi. I mentioned last time as well, just from the name we know he's from the Khazraj tribe. Banu Aus and Banu Khazraj, from the Ansar. The Prophet ﷺ said he loved the Ansar, and he said, love my Ansar because they are going to decrease. They are going to decrease because those who invited him to Medina, salam, were the Ansar, and their progeny was going to decrease. But look at this. He is in Spain. The distance between Medina and Spain, he's in Spain. He's in Cordoba. And Cordoba is very important for us because it was the center of scholarship at a time, and also what happened there. And it's very much connected to this century and this time when Imam al-Qurtubi was there. So he's born at the beginning of the 13th century, 1204, and he was 32 years old when Masjid al-Qurtuba was converted into a cathedral. Because you know what happened to the Muslim Spain. It was conquered by it was converted, it was desecrated, and this masjid that was at the heart of that town was converted into a cathedral. But just imagine, what would he do? What would a scholar like him do at that time? He couldn't live there. So he left and he went to Egypt. And Egypt was in the hands of the Mamluks at that time. And subhanallah, he was 32-year-old, that is 1236, right? He goes to Egypt at some time, we don't know the exact date, but it was after this thing happened. And 1258 is the destruction of Baghdad. So all the scholars in the Abbasid Empire at that time, because the Mongols came, they all moved to Mamluk Egypt. And Cairo and Damascus, Damascus and Cairo became the centers of Islamic scholarship for centuries after that. We have all the later scholars coming from these two centers, Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. These are great, great scholars who lived at that time. But look at his life. At 32 or so, he leaves his hometown, he goes to a strange new place. He lands in Iskandariya. Iskandariya is the port city where because he's coming from Spain, he lands there, and this is the same place where we talked about Napoleon arrived. And then from Iskandariya he moved to Upper Egypt, and he isolated himself in a small place for the rest of his life. And he produced this wonderful book, wonderful tafsir that we have, among other books. But just before we mention the third layer I want you to talk about, Afala, that he is not the one who actually came up with it, but he synthesized it for us, the third layer. Let me just bring us back to this place before the second footnote. We are trying to understand the usage of afala with these faculties, with these inner faculties and the senses, the five senses. Why? Because these are the resources that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to gain knowledge. Gain knowledge. And knowledge is of two kinds. And this is related to the first principles that we want to talk about. The first is self-evident knowledge. I sent that link to the PDF, I think, about the Euclid's geometry, for example. A part is smaller, or the whole is bigger than the part, right? Two parallel lines, even if they are extended to infinity, they would never join. Self-evident truths, yani ilm dururi or badi, something that is self-evident, it does not need any further proof. The second kind of knowledge is requiring proofs. Water boils at 100 degrees. Somebody makes a statement, he or she has to prove it. This is not badihi, this is not self-evident. Nobody knows this as the two parallel lines never meet. This is a different kind. So two fundamental kinds of knowledge. Al-Qurtubi, he reports, actually, I was not very confident about the finding, who is the actual scholar who gave us this deeper layer of afala. But many mufassirs, they point to Zamakhshari, which is probably the accurate, but I'm not certain. But he is the one who pointed to that the third layer that I want to get to. But before we get to that point, just to go back to Imam al-Qurtubi's Cordoba, and why this is so important to know, that what happened there was a huge setback for the Islamic scholarship in the 13th century. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened, this place closed up, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened Egypt and the entire Mamluk Empire. Abbasids gone, Mongols came, what happened? Another place opened up. So there has been, until this last thing that happened, we don't know, we are in it now, whether there will be any survival of our civilization after this last encounter, but until now, there has always been almost simultaneous openings by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this may be an opening for us. We are sitting here. Who knows? Anyways, the digression that I really want to make is about Cordoba. Imam al-Qurtubi's city, if we want to connect forever in our memory, this scholar of ours had to leave Cordoba because the masjid, if you have visited Masjid al-Qurtuba, this is a masjid out of this world. It was a labor of love. It was a labor of, it's so beautiful, the aesthetics in it, just the mihrabs. Like it has worked, it has inspired generations of Muslims, for centuries. Iqbal, because we all have some relationship with Iqbal, he wanted to go and pray there. And he was coming back from this round table in England, and he actually received official permission to be able to pray 2 rakat in the masjid in Cordoba. They were very strict, and they have become much more strict now. When I went there the second or the third time with Basit, my son, we actually had a very bad encounter with the guard. We wanted to pray just 2 rakats in the masjid, and he wouldn't let. So Basit started to talk to him, and I quickly pray. The guard realizes what is happening. Then I start to talk to him, and Basit starts to pray, and the guard actually picks him up. This is a masjid, and they won't allow. This is 2000, like this is all the human rights, 2005, 4, whatever it was. But this is not the old medieval times, they say, when there was no freedom. But now there is supposed to be freedom of everything. And you cannot go to the masjid, to a place that has been masjid for centuries, and pray. And when Iqbal went there, he was that night was so beautiful for him, the day he arrived there. Like he was just taken somewhere else, and he left behind this beautiful Masjid Qurtuba, the poetry, Silsila Roz o Shab, Naqsh Kare Hadisat, Silsila Roz o Shab, Asle Hayat wa Mamat, Silsila Roz o Shab, Tare Harire Do Rang, Jisse Banati hai Zaat Apni Kabaye Sifat, Silsila Roz o Shab, Saze Azal Ki Fakhan, Jisse Dikhati hai Zaat Zero. This is so beautiful, this poem that he left behind. And it has this couplet, Awwalu wa akhiru fana, batinu wa zahiru fana, naqsh kohan ho ke no manzil akhir fana. This connects with Huwal awwalu wal akhiru wa zahiru wal batinu, ma huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. So this is just a side note, because we have to really make these connections with these people. So the point about Afala that Imam al-Qurtubi leaves for us. We said the first layer is that we will definitely go and find out all the wonders of creation in the camel. They did that, every tafsir has that. But the point that they went to after that, the third layer, is something that I want to point out. First layer is to go the camel and find in its creation, such as it can travel in the desert without eating. And as Hassan al-Basri Rahmullah said, that don't you see what it eats? It eats qat, and it gives you milk. Like in the desert, qat is this useless for human being. This is a thorny bush. It's everywhere in the desert. Camels, he says, are able to survive on this qat that no one else in this world eats, and they give you this milk. So second is all the benefits that they have, the amount of weight they can carry. And the third is this part that I want. This is not Imam al-Qurtubi himself, but he is the one who collected it. And please try to pay attention. What did we say? أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Don't they look at the camel, how it has been created? What is both the translation and the original Arabic? What is it? It's a question. Do they not yanzuru? Do they not see how the camel? It's a question. But the third layer of this ayah of reflection is that it's not a question. The words are asking a question, but in reality it's not a question. And this is إِذَا عَلَاكَ الْفَيْلِ أَمَّا فِيهِ الْإِسْتِفْهَامِ لَمْ يَبْقَ الْإِسْتِفْهَامِ عَلَى حَقِيقَةٍ. When a verb is connected to this letter of istifham, of a letter of question, lam yabqa istifham, this is a very strong statement, question is never left in reality, fil haqiqa. In the lugha, in the language, we are using the language, but it's not a question anymore. What does that mean? أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. What does that mean? If it's not a question, it is an established reality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has created the camel, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not asking them to go and question and find out, maybe answer is yes or no. No. The answer is definitely yes. He is the one who is able to do the three things that you are denying. Number one, that he is the creator. Number two, that he is guiding you through this messenger who is giving you this ayah. And number three, you are going to die and you are going to go to one of these two places. All three are established facts. You cannot say yes or no about the camel. It's not even a question about the camel. This is the third, deeper layer of what is being said. And that takes us to the last part of the class today, and that is something that I've been trying to do for the last 3 classes about the first principles. So, what does it all mean to have an ayah in the Qur'an, or 45 ayahs in this case, connected with afala, and then using the faculties of external faculties of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, of the sight, of the hearing, of the touch, like all of those things, and the internal faculties. Why? Why? This is not dealing with this ayah anymore, but the entirety of the 45. What is the connection? How do we believe, how do we know, how do we understand the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is through knowledge. When we say Ashhadu la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah, these are the 2 statements of knowledge, if we are making them with intention. We are saying we know, I testify, Ashhadu la ilaha illallah, there is no ilah other than Allah. I testify, right? This is what we are saying. Second, Ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah, that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is messenger, right? We are testifying. Testification is experiential knowledge compared to theoretical knowledge. Somebody out there can say the same 2 statements with the tongue, but those statements are not in the heart. It's not tasdeeq. It's not attestation by the heart. Just merely a professor is teaching a class in the university and says Muslims say Ashhadu la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. He states this in perfect Arabic. His statements are void. They don't have the meaning in it. These are just words, right? Because he is not believing, he is just telling this class. This is what experiential knowledge. That's why we say Ashhadu la ilaha. I testify. When do we testify? This is experiential knowledge, right? We have tasted. When you say this apple I ate was so delicious, you mean the taste has come, like you have experienced the taste. Ashhadu. Now, ilm, knowledge, is of 2 kinds. One is experiential knowledge and one is theoretical knowledge. The process of acquiring knowledge is of 2 kinds. One is badihi, self-evident knowledge. You don't need to go and experiment for that. Parallel lines are never going to meet. A whole is greater than the part. All of those things, right? Now, the second kind is the acquired knowledge. And that second kind depends on the first kind. If the first kind is not there, then the acquired knowledge can actually be ignorance. Knowledge and jahl, these are two opposites, right? Ilm and the lack of ilm, these are opposite, jahl. Right? Ilm is of several kinds and jahl is of several kinds. Ignorance is not just one kind of ignorance. Ignorance is like, there are many kinds of ignorance. Compound ignorance. Compound ignorance, Jahal Murakkab, means the one who is ignorant doesn't even know that he is ignorant. Likewise, ilm is of several kinds. Ilmul yaqeen, in Al-Hakim al-Takasur, in that surah, we have Summa Ilm al-Yaqeen, the knowledge of certainty. They will Summa Yarawna, then they will see it with this certainty. So there is knowledge that is certain. These are the first principles. These are called the tasdiqat. Human intellect and faculties and the entire apparatus of knowing is made so that the first principles are inscribed on the fitrah. When the Prophet ﷺ told us that every newborn is born upon fitrah, that means the receptivity to the first principles is part of the creation. Every child knows the first principles, although unable to articulate them. In order to articulate in words or in expressions the first principles, we need to acquire some knowledge of language, of lugha, how to construct words, how to express ourselves, right? That secondary knowledge then becomes functional knowledge as well. We talk, we go to the bazaar, we buy things with it. Like, this is all built into it. The first principles, therefore, are principles which do not require any proof. They are self-evident proofs. If we understand that, then we understand that the knowledge that we acquire is of lower grade knowledge compared to the first principles. Self-evident knowledge is of higher level. In our tradition, it was the self-evident first principles based on the self-evident knowledge which governed the acquired knowledge. So our chemistry, our math, our physics, psychology, history, everything was governed by the higher order principles in the first principles embedded in that higher level of knowledge. We said knowledge is of two kinds. When we were trying to see, for instance, the Big Bang, what were we doing? This is the connection I really wanted to make for the last 3 classes. We were working in which branch of knowledge? Self-evident or acquired? Acquired. It was the acquired branch of physics, cosmology that we were dealing with. If that branch of knowledge is not connected to the first principles, then it's a free radical floating on its own. It's got no grounding anywhere. It can go to any place. Like, it has no boundaries left. It's like a teenager who doesn't know what is halal and haram. Like, he's got the abilities but no knowledge of what these abilities are for. This is the greatest crisis that we are facing in the contemporary world. The connection between the first principles, the higher order governing principles, and the lower order branches have been disconnected. And actually, this is very interesting because the Western scholarship blames the Islamic tradition that it always remained captive, imprisoned in this crucible which was being governed by the higher order principles. They said that's why your sciences never flourished. So they are saying that, well, yes, we have the ability to make the atomic bomb. Our physics has reached the place where we can break the atom and create this horrible weapon. You couldn't do this, therefore we are superior, our civilization is superior, our physics is superior, our science is superior to your science. But that's not the case. We were the teenagers, we knew we are the teenagers, and we need to live within the halal and haram. We knew that we can do this, but we don't want to do this. We know this is the boundary in which we need to live, because the boundaries were constructed by that higher order principles. First principles were tasdiqat. We said, amanna, we believe. We believe in the Creator, we believe in the message. That gives us the framework of our activity. But they said, no, there is no Creator, there is no possibility. We can do whatever. Yes, you can do whatever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ability to break the atom. And He has given us the planes to drop the atomic bomb. Yes, we can do those things. But should we? So, in our tradition, we said no. We should not gain. We should not go to that area. We should not have the ability to break the atom. They say, well, you couldn't do this. No, we could have done this. Can you think of it? Like a tradition that gave us this fundamental understanding of the acquired knowledge. Like think of anything. Like think of zero. Think of sifr. Al-Khwarizmi gave us sifr, the idea of sifr. Like it was there before him in the Indian thing, but they were using it as a placeholder, not as an actual number. Can we have any computers without ciphers? Can we have anything without ciphers? Like if you have 2023, this is the year 20. Could we have 20 without the zero? Take the zero out. And those were operative principles. Going back to Cordoba, just another side note before I go to the 10 principles. Going back to Cordoba and to all Islamic cities before the modern age. Look at the organizations they did. The center of the city is the masjid. Why? That is the heart of the community, right? And then how do you reach the center? You make concentric circles so that no one is disadvantaged with a linear direction. If the roads were linear, then you'll be living 10 kilometers and I'll be living 2 kilometers, right? And then that will create economic disparity, social disparity. You want to come to the masjid, I want to come to the masjid, but you have to travel 10 kilometers and I have to travel only 2 kilometers. No, if you make the circles, right, then everyone has the center is there. The first circle, the second circle, the third circle. But around the circle, that's how the Kaaba is. We go for tawaf, right? No matter where you are in the courtyard in the Kaaba, where the Kaaba is, whichever direction you are equal distance. And then they said, yes, we need to have economic activity, but only the people who are selling perfume can have their shops close to the masjid. The spices people, like the tanneries, all of those away, because the people coming to the masjid, they need to smell fragrance, not the spices, not the tannery. Look at the depth of these things. When they construct, so they governed the secondary branches, and then each branch, they said, well, we need to have a framework. It's impossible. You have biology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, all of these branches of acquired knowledge. If we are to go after each branch and say, okay, this is your principle, you live with it, that would be very complex. We need to come up with one framework that can be applied to all branches of knowledge in the second category of acquiring knowledge. And they said, Ibn Furak, he is the one who came up with this beautiful book called Al-Hudud, the boundaries. A book of definitions of everything that human beings can think of. Just the book of definitions, Al-Hudud. So one of the things that develop is inna mabadi kulli fannin or ilmin ashara. Every branch of knowledge has 10 foundational principles. Look at this framework of knowledge. One single framework, 10 fundamental principles which are going to be applied to biology, physics, math, psychology, history, every single thing, every branch of knowledge. The first is the definition. The second is the mawdu, is the subject matter. Summa samara. And like these 10 principles are put in 2 couplets. Like look at the minds. Samara is the fruit, wa nisbah, wa fadluhu, wal wade, wal ismul, istimdadu, hukmu shari. So these are the 10 principles they have for every branch of knowledge. And if we were to apply these principles today, and this is important for us to know, why we are talking about these, because remember when we were talking about the Big Bang, what did we say? We are trying to find the origin of the cosmos in a branch of knowledge that doesn't deal with the origins. We are trying to find origin of species, Darwin told us, in biology. But biology, the subject matter of biology is not the origin of species. So we are in the wrong zone. We are in totally wrong zone. We are trying to find answers from a branch of knowledge that doesn't even deal with that question. To put questions in the proper framework is the first obligation. As a believer, we have an obligation to understand the question before we can answer the question. Because if we don't do that, then there is danger of going astray. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. I wanted to finish today on time, inshallah, so we have reached that. I hope it's been a little bit beneficial on what we said, starting with the use of afala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to continually reflect on His book, establish our relationship with it, and establish our relationship with the ocean of knowledge that has been produced on this book. So we are blessed with friends, real friends, who will never leave us, inshallah. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار يا الله أنت حليم كريم عظيم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم اللهم يا شافي اشفنا اللهم اشف قلوبنا واصدرنا من كل داء. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cure us from all the diseases of ignorance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take us to the final destiny. There would be said to Ya ayyuhan nafs mutminna irji ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiya fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. Amin ya rabbal alamin. Salatu wassalamu ala rasulika al-kareem. Assalamu alaikum.